What's up, folks? Welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I am joined with Chris McNally, and I got to say, I'm a new fan. I'm a fan of Chris McNally now. I can't believe what this guy did. You know who sent me your video?
I
Juanita.
think Juan did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know that?
I text him. I still talk to
Okay,
Juan here and there.
okay. Well, then I didn't even know you knew him, so that's a surprise to me.
Small world, man.
Yeah, it's a small world, but I'll say that a lot of you that don't know his ex, it is what is it? Biting time.
Biding my time.
Biding my time on X. And I gotta say, man, I saw the video and I can't play it on YouTube. I'm very sorry about that. We're gonna take it to the back channel, Nino's Corner.tv. I know a lot of hisses and moans and rude comments. I get it, I know, folks, but it's too hot for YouTube. But it's he encapsulated the whole Great Awakening in like 6 minutes of video, more so than what I can do with every friggin' podcast that I put out here. He encapsulated it all in one short video. I saw this and I was like, this is genius. This is genius. You articulated it well. It was easy to follow, understandably so. I mean, it was just great. So I got to tell you, Chris, very well done. And so I reached out to Chris and said, I really want to do an interview with you. I think you have a lot to talk about. I want to know what's going on in that mind in there. And he sent me some notes. And I'm looking at this and I said, you know, man, we got to give my YT audience some of this, and then some of this has got to go in the back because it's too dark. It gets really dark. But we could talk about the surface level stuff here on FluffTube. Are you okay with that? And then take it
Absolutely.
back. All right, cool. So, Chris, thank you for joining me.
Nino, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And you know what's funny is I consider myself like a hodgepodge editor. It's not my strong suit in the world of media, but again, from the compartmentalization of the last 15 years of my life, this just made sense in making it.
You knocked it out of the park, and it's exactly right up exactly my beliefs to the T. So you were able to encapsulate all this in that one video that I'll show on the back channel, or you can go to his ex, Biding My Time, and watch it. You can just go there and watch it, Biding My Time. But first, folks, are you worried about the future of the U.S. economy? Because we all are right now. It looks like it's a basket going to hell. With so much uncertainty in the air, it's natural to fret about the security of your retirement savings. But there's one asset that stands the test of time, and that's gold and silver. For centuries, gold has been the hedge against market volatility and economic instability. With a gold IRA from Noble Gold Investments, you can harness the power of precious metals to help protect your financial future. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k into a self-directed gold IRA, you can enjoy potential long-term growth and stability, folks. Diversify your portfolio with tangible asset that has real value. Setting up your gold IRA has never been easier with Noble Gold Investments' streamlined process and expert guidance. This election year, don't let election volatility and uncertainty keep you up at night. Vote for the timeless safety of gold and silver in 2024. Noble Gold Investments will give you up to 10 1-ounce silver Trump coins or a 10-ounce silver American flag bar if you open up a qualified account today. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now, noblegoldinvestments.com, and get started. All right, man. Lots to unpack here, Chris. So we'll do what we can do here on FluffTube, and let's get started. Ding, ding, ding. So the first line here was I was like, wow, that's a way to kick it off. You were born into the occult world of Western Protestant charismatic churches. Example, Kenneth Copeland. Now, Kenneth Copeland, man, I look at that guy and to me, and I don't know, I have a big Christian audience, but to me, in my opinion, he's like the epitome of evil. To me. But explain what you mean by this. Like, a lot of people won't look at that as the occult world. Oh, wait a minute. Protestant charismatic churches, explain.
Well, to give a little preface, I also come from a bloodline in the Masons. And so both sides of my family, my father's father was in the Scottish Rites. My mother's biological father, was a Shriner. My great grandmother was a part of the Eastern Star. So this is, and then on my mom's side, it's a bunch of witches and covens, and there's aspects to this from a spiritual standpoint that I know about as I got older in regard to what that world actually does behind the scenes. But as I've gotten older, again, I grew up in this, and thankfully, I personally believe, because I'm an Orthodox Christian today, I personally believe that God brought me out of that entire world of Western Protestantism. And if you want to go through the history of how it all began, that's great. But I'm under the conclusion that it was co-opted by other agencies and institutions long before even Billy Graham went mainstream. And because of that, I believe that it's the wool's been pulled over so many people's eyes in that world, not just from the prosperity aspect, but from literally keeping people docile and keeping them in this fear state because of how they've co-opted it, and how I believe that they've forced a narrative and a culture of shame and guilt and sin. And it's not that those things don't exist, but it is not the baseline pillar that is the death, resurrection, and atonement and the blood of Jesus Christ. And so because of that, I went deep after seeing some things early on, both spiritually and then just being innately, because of trauma, intuitive and resourceful and scrappy. And then as I got older, and I even put this on here in the notes, Nino, because I think it's a podcast all by itself, but coming out of that world and truly trying to escape it in the sense of what's real, what's reality. If this is supposed to be good, then what is evil actually look like?
Right. It was
But there was
disguised. It was disguised. It was deceptive, right?
and
So
so
you
I
were
was on a
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I
Well,
was
I
going
was
to
going to
say
say,
you were raised in this. I have a friend, a very close friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name, but he was also raised by, I guess, the charismatic church. He was born in a community, in a combine, and he was raised in this combine. Like I can't remember where, somewhere in New Mexico or Colorado. I can't remember the exact location, but he told me just how crazy this life was and how he ran away from it. He escaped it, and they outcasted him and they shamed him and they did so many things to him. When he was, I think 17 is when he was 16 or 17 was he left, and he rebelled, and they just ridiculed him, criticized him, shamed him. His parents wouldn't talk to him anymore. I mean, his dad was like a pastor that had many women on the side, and I mean,
it's
and that's a
typical.
very common thing with these pastors, by
Yeah,
the way, right?
it is. When I was 16 years old, again, my life has been riddled by these strange, I say strange, they are, but consistent spiritual experiences from 5 years old. At 16 years old, I met a man that whatever took place in that moment could have only been God or a higher power of some sort that allowed me to step out of the life that I was currently in. I went from being the watcher to watching myself from outside of what I was living day to day. And then
Did
from
you
there,
suffer
like,
trauma when you were younger?
oh yeah, physical,
Like
sexual, emotional, mental, all of it.
within
So
the church, people within the church?
this is not an indictment on anyone or any institution. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
But it was prevalent. It was real. I mean, personally, I shouldn't be alive. I should be dead, incarcerated, or some addict on the streets somewhere. And what's unique is my life was changing quickly, and I believe this also goes hand in hand with the Mandela effect, which is a different conversation. But when I was 21 years old, and again, this was the conversation where this could be a podcast all by itself. Long story short, there's 5 firsthand witnesses and 4 secondhand accounts. But I performed an exorcism at 21 that changed my life. And
You did,
yes,
or they performed it on you. You performed it?
no, I performed it, and it
That's
changed my life.
ballsy, man. That's ballsy to do at 21.
Well, I wasn't. I mean, you want to hear it?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
So I'm 21. Little did I know that I was on my path to alcoholism, which is a part of all of this in some form or fashion down the road. But I was so hungry for the truth. Even at this age, I was naive. I was an idealist, and I was trying to change my life at a very young age. But what most people don't understand is if you grow up in trauma, real trauma, those things begin to manifest in your early 20s because your chemicals in your brain are changing. And now your fight or flight is adjusting. And this is where you see people have all these crazy episodes. This is where people wake up and they didn't realize, holy shit, I'm bipolar. And most people have zero resources or tools to actually become aware of what's going on, and they just medicate. And so
that's why boxing saved me, man. I went right into the sport that was fight or flight, right? I chose to fight. I chose that. I gravitated towards that. And I wonder, is it the trauma from my childhood? Anyway, that's another thing. Go ahead.
So one thing that I always was inclined to growing up was helping people, like needy people, because I just knew it. I experienced it. And so I immediately went to the streets when I was supposed to go to college to play college basketball. It was either that, the Navy, and I had a welding scholarship because I went to a vocational school. I did none of it, and I went into the arts. But during this time, I spent a ton of time on the streets, and this kept me from a lot of other terrible choices. But it was my outlet for the beginning of trying to figure out why the hell I was the way I was. Nonetheless, I've always been someone I can't explain it. If I got a call today saying, hey, Chris, you need to address 1 billion people, I'd be like, all right, I can do that. I mean, it's been something where I guess we could say leadership in some form or fashion has always been a part of my life. Nonetheless, it's 3 a.m. I live in a house with 9 guys at the time, mind you. And I get a call from my landlord. My landlord was a part of a Christian outreach organization. The dude's in Canada getting his doctorate's degree. So I immediately think someone's dead if my landlord who's in Canada currently is calling me. Now, the funny thing is this guy's hilarious because, again, not a great situation. And he acted like it was, we were going to go get a burger or something together. Either way, he said, hey, Chris, look, long story short, one of my best friend's little sister's boyfriend is possessed by demons. And we made some phone calls to a bunch of different people. Michael Ketter, you can look him up. He was on The Voice. He was a finalist, or the America's Got Talent.
This is the guy that was possessed, or this is the guy that?
No, this is one of the guys that connected us. He was like, okay, hey, call this guy in Chattanooga. And so I'm sitting here thinking, like, they said, you might be the only person who can help. And I'm like, okay, what? So they're like, look, it's at this address. I knew exactly where it was, just down the street. And so I get up to go to this apartment. And then what's funny is my 2 roommates were coming in from drinking and partying. Like, where are you going? It's like, someone's possessed by a demon. I'll be back.
What?
So I get to this apartment. And again, when I say 5.
Could this guy be, could he have been crazy, psychological?
No, I'll get there. I'll get there. So I get there. I knock on the door. And this lady opens it up. She's so kind. I actually saw her like 6-7 days ago, randomly. Really? And she was like, hey, come on in. And so I walk in and I just am just getting an idea of what the hell's going on. And there's a kid on the floor and he's speaking in all these different languages. There's a girl next to him just bawling her eyes out, screaming. There's an older man, like my father's age, standing there with a Bible, saying things. And then there's a girl in the corner just watching it all. And I just take it in. And I remember I looked at the lady who answered the door. I'm not going to name names, but and I said, hey, I'm going to step out for a minute. And I literally stepped outside and I was like, do I leave? What do I do? And this was another moment of my life where God showed up in a way that has gotten me to where I am today, and in my deep belief of if he's for us, who can be against us? And from that moment on, the best way I can describe this, Nino, is it felt like playing catch with your dad, if that made sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I heard, go back in there and remember what you've read. I'm sitting here thinking, what? I kid you not, Nino. It was literally like a Rolodex of scripture. And then I heard, get everybody out. What? I'm in this person's nice apartment, by the way. This was, this is over a decade ago.
In California, in LA, right?
No, this is in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Sorry, I don't know. Oh.
No. Either way, I'm sitting there and I was like, hey, I need everybody to leave. And she was just like, you know what? Can we go upstairs? And I said, that's fine, but everyone needs to leave the room. What I realized quickly was the girl was screaming and was belligerent. And the father, he was literally the father of the two girls, the two sisters. He was speaking to this kid like a parent does to a referee in a high school game. And I realized there's no power here. There's no authority here. There's nothing but disbelief, unbelief, and panic.
Confusion.
Yes. And so they all left. And then all of a sudden it was just like, do this, do this. And so I just started doing what I heard in my head. And so I asked, who are you? 3 times. And then finally, this kid who was on the floor, his eyes opened up and they were all white, just the whites of his eyes. And out of his chest came a voice that was not human, that said, literally, laughing, "We are many. We are everywhere." And that's when I knew, okay, this is real. Like, now what? Nino, I'm going to fast forward to the parts that actually matter. This was at 3 a.m. This lasted till like 6:30 in the morning.
We are many.
We are everywhere.
You know, that's like what's happening today with all this they, them, he, she,
yes.
you know,
yes.
Anyway, that's, but people can go where they want.
That. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I started learning quickly, like, one, these things know scripture more and better than I do. And everything that they were doing was about doubt and disbelief. That's what I learned after the fact. It wasn't during this where I had all these epiphanies. This was years later, looking back, like, this is how God walked you through this, Chris. And I heard, again, bind their tongue. Okay. And then I commanded them to bind their tongue. This is where shit started to get really weird. This is how Hollywood makes all these movies, because they have witnessed all of this, because it's all real. Nino, I'm not kidding. And again, there's 5 people that were upstairs. They heard all of this. They were around, especially after. There's a connection at the very end. This kid's jaw disconnects and goes over his face. And there are guttural screams, multiple screams coming from inside of his body.
Like it dislocated and went up, like, or did it just look like that?
No. It dislodged and went over his nose. And these screams began inside of him. And then
how old was this kid?
He was younger than me. He was like 18 years old.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. And then I heard, don't allow them to touch you. Don't let them touch you. And so I commanded them to stay on the floor. And they're not allowed to move again. And if I moved, if this was his body, and if I got this close, you'd see his body do this. And so I started to learn certain things. And then there was this turning point, because I remember that mentor that I talked about at 16 that changed my life?
Yes.
During those encounters with him, he told me how many angels I had at the time. Now, he passed away about a decade ago. And the first time I ever met him, he said I had 6 angels with me all the time. The last time I talked to him, he said I had 8. I had 6 ministering angels, 2 warring angels. I remember sitting there looking at these things in the eyes, and I asked, because I saw them. This was what was hilarious and crazy. It was just fucking crazy, you know. Either way, I see their eyes looking like around my head and shoulders. And I knew they can see and I asked him, how many angels do you see? And the look on this kid's face was like, oh shit. Like, this guy knows something.
Crazy.
And so I just keep going, like, again, I keep hearing all these different passages. It was almost like it was limitless. I could see YouTube videos that I watched of people in Africa being delivered from possession. I saw all these scriptures, and I just kept going back and forth with this kid. And then finally, I'm sitting there at the window. I'm exhausted. I have no idea what's going on at this point. It's just like, okay, why am I here? And I turn around, and this kid had pulled a knife out, and this is where it all just came to an end. I remember yelling, in the name of Jesus, drop the knife. He dropped the knife, and then I went back over there and I told them that I'm going to cast them into the abyss. And out of this kid came literal, like, something, and all of his breath, and he died. And
the kid died?
So hear me out. And again, if you
he
want to
came
call
back,
this
you're just figuratively saying.
No, he died. This is where it gets weird. This stuff comes out. He is lifeless. I start to cry. I'm on the ground, okay? Like, he's literally next to me. I'm on the ground sitting on my butt. It's like I just got done, like, watching war take place. And I kid you not, Nino, my hand got picked up off the ground, went straight to his neck, and I said, wake up. And the kid woke up. And this is what happened. He looked at me. He breathed as deep as he could. He looked at me and said, "Who the fuck are you? Where am I?" As he's skirting backwards in total fear and panic. Blood's coming out of his nose. The kid, he's grabbing his chest. He said, "What happened to me? What did you do to me? What did you do to me?" And then I just started screaming for what's-her-face. And they all came downstairs. So the last part of this is, one, I ended up talking with the oldest sister about what happened. I told her about the knife at a restaurant and what that took place, how all of this ended. And she just starts bawling, crying. So her roommate was the girl in the corner watching this whole thing in the beginning, who is an atheist. When the older sister told her, like, "Hey, we've got someone coming over to handle this," she thought like an exorcist from the Catholic Church was coming over, not some 21-year-old previously white trash kid. And
Wow.
what's unique is when they were upstairs praying, the roommate atheist friend saw knife and blood everywhere, and they immediately began to pray against it. And I'm sitting here thinking, in the restaurant, you have got, like, literally all of this is an act of God. Here's where
She's not an atheist anymore, or is she still?
What now? I don't know. I never saw her ever again. That roommate. I ended up meeting up with this kid. I remember where I met him. I met him off Shallowford Road at the back parking lot of an Applebee's. And we got in his car, and I just asked him, like, "You got to tell me everything, man. This doesn't just happen on accident. I've seen this in other forms and fashions." And he went through the whole gamut of everything that he had learned and practiced with Aleister Crowley's teachings, dark magic, witchcraft. He started telling me about certain gifts that he had acquired, the gift of translation, being able to literally translate in the spirit, what like psychic viewers
So
do.
he opened up portals, and he opened up a portal within himself.
In the parking lot of Applebee's, he had fire come out of his fingers. And I asked him, I said, "So now what? You were literally delivered from this in some form or fashion by the blood of God." And he said, "There's too much power in it." And I asked him, "How did you get this?"
He didn't want to give into. He went back to it.
Here's the weirdest part of this that led me down the rabbit holes after this, that opened up my entire life to where I am now, is I asked him, so like Aleister Crowley and all these different teachings, Jack Parsons, all of that. And I said, "So what happened when you got possessed? Do you remember it?" And he said, "I was on my bed," and he said, "Paralysis came over me. And I opened my eyes, and a 3-foot tall being with huge black slanted eyes walked into my body." That's exactly a gray alien. That's exactly what Crowley depicted as the demon he was communicating with. That is what the fallen have disguised themselves as in many forms and fashion. And ever since then, it was the open door for me to realize, okay, if God put me in this position to witness this, to experience this, to be a part of this, and to watch this kid actually be delivered, at least in that moment of time, what does that mean with the rest of my life and what he's trying to show me? From all of these crazy experiences from 5 years old to meeting a previous mentor who opened the veil spiritually for me. And that is where I began my journey. And I was already woke, by the way, or awake, not woke.
Awake, yeah. Big difference.
Yeah. I had already seen Loose Change, in 2008. I was already moving I was aware of the Masons. And this was where it's like, okay, I'm going to take a leap. I'd ended up moving from Chattanooga, moved to Austin, Texas, and I went all in on theater, stand-up, improv, and all things conspiracy theory, which leads me, real quick story. So I moved to Austin, okay?
Which I love Austin. I've lived there for 10 years. I love that place. Not anymore, but
yeah, once upon a time.
Yeah.
I was working with a mentor's company to pay the bills, and one of the employees at one of these, I guess you would say it's retail locations, most annoying employee I've ever worked with, but this dude was constantly talking about aliens and all kinds of stuff. Well, long story short, finally, I'm like, okay, no one knows who this dude is. Brandon was his name. It's like, "Brandon, like, tell me like everything." So long story short, here's the thing. He always had this little green alien on his desk all the time. Okay. And so finally I'm asking him about it. It's like, "Dude, tell me about this green alien." So his grandfather, Nino, I am not making this shit up. Like, this is how synchronicity or my life has been.
This is how it works. I believe it.
He's telling me about this alien and how his grandfather was a part of the SR-71 project. All right. The Blackbird deep space, high altitude project. And his grandfather always had that little green alien on his desk. And he said that he asked his grandfather his entire life, are they real? Are they real? And he would always just say, never would say yes, no. He'd just go. So when his grandfather died, he inherited that and a Sumerian tablet replica. And he said, that's all I was given. And here's where it gets crazy. I worked at that location for like maybe 6 weeks. My whole job was to go in and find out what was wrong. It's usually the employee. Either way, we're sitting there one day and this elderly couple walks in. They start talking. Again, the guy was good at his job. This dude was wearing a Navy hat, veteran hat. And so he starts talking. And, oh, well, my grandfather was based there. Awesome. What year were you there? I was there this year. Oh my gosh, my grandfather was there that year. What was your grandfather's name? And Brandon said his grandfather's name, and this guy's eyes got like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, my grandfather was part of the 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗹 project. And this old man steps out and shakes his hand and said, I knew your grandfather. I worked with him on the 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗹 project.
Wow. And you witnessed this.
I'm right there watching all of it. So they start talking, and I'm just listening. And finally, I get the only question I asked. And I said, sir, and I pointed to that green alien. And I said, are they real? And this is in 2012, by the way. And his wife looked at him, and that told me everything I needed to know. And that look was, are you going to tell him, or can we leave now? It was like, okay, like they're not stupid. And so even moments like that, where it was convicted, like this deep conviction of like, hey man, the world isn't what you think. You were put in these places by design. The things that happen to you, yeah, you're going to have, like, I am just now at a place in my life where I'm on the other side of all of the shit from my past. And there's
so am I. So
yeah,
I'm right there with you on that.
There's this newness to life that I haven't ever experienced before. Little did I know that from then till, pre-sobriety or right around it, that I was going to, go through this world getting what I asked for. And what I mean by that is, I remember when I moved to Austin, I told God, I just want the truth. Please just tell me the truth. And in hindsight, I believe that he did just that. He said, okay, this is what he's asked for. Let's give it to him. I didn't know what that actually was going to entail and the path that it was going to take me down. But just that alone, this was even before Hollywood and all of these other aspects that opened themselves up with my life. But little brief context, like that's me between the ages of, 5 to 23.
So you believe that these little green men are demonic entities, right? Obviously. I mean, if you perform a possession and that's what possessed this person, would you say that that's what these are? They're fallen, or would you say that they could be just interdimensional beings that just their playground is here and they do what they want? I mean, what are these things?
Sure. I'm personally under the conviction at this point because I read all the time. I mean, I've got the Septuagint Bible over here. I've got,
that's crazy.
Yeah. I got the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've got, books on Tartaria, flat Earth, spherical Earth, all of it. I mean, I've literally gone down the path of like, hey, I want to know the truth, even if the truth sucks, even if it hurts, even if it's not something I currently believe. My current conclusion is that God is a lot bigger than we think, and our full understanding has been lost, stolen, hidden, and rewritten by design. It does not negate this story's outcome. To give you an example, in the Chronicles of Narnia, Aslan tells the children, in your world, you know me by another name. And that's always stood out to me in regard to the fact that Aslan was the representation of Christ in that world, and he was referring to Jesus in this one. I believe that the blood atoned for all timelines, all realities, etc. That being said, I do believe that the 22 fallen angels that were sent to Mount Hermon have played a very significant role in manipulating different bloodlines, in hybridization, in even partnering with other beings that we're unaware of. Again, I don't believe that we're it, and I don't believe that it's just us and angels. I think that there are probably a litany of different beings, both malevolent and benevolent, that are a part of not just this realm, but dimensions higher and maybe lower. And for whatever reason, we are significant and wildly special, because I believe humans were born out of the literal image of God. We are the DNA of God incarnate.
Our DNA is like a prized possession for these beings.
It is. And so I believe that is, because personally, I'm under the belief that we are in the biblical short season, that we're not in the end times, that if we were to go back in history, and look at the Dark Ages and how everything's been quickly flipped on its head, post-Tartarian mud flood reset. Like, we are in the final end game. This aligns with
Be
how
careful.
all of
Don't
this
say
is.
that. Don't say that. But
This aligns with that. This aligns with that alphabet
yeah.
letter. And so I know that there is literal evil in this world that is not human and not of this dimension and not of this time. And I also believe that there are extremely good beings that are here with us and for us as
And the
well.
ones that are evil, we could say, are highly intelligent,
Yes,
and
very.
they're able to manipulate and corrupt humanity and turn us against each other.
Exactly.
So I often think about that movie with Roddy Rod Piper. Was it They Live?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I really do believe they walk among us, man. I think they
I
are.
agree.
There's no other explanation for this shit. What I'm watching right now, how this is playing out. There's no other reason. This is a spiritual war at its core, and my whole thing is trying to figure out what these entities are, and I think they are. I have to go with right now the broad term. Well, I got to put them all in that umbrella of being the fallen, but what the Nephilim, whatever you want to call them, they're that. I just I have to go with that, with where we're at in our history right now, with or where we're headed. I mean, look what's happening, all the world events, everything that's happening. This is not by accident. This is not just
No,
happening. They're following a manual. They're following a script
they
of
are.
end times.
They are. And to go back to like what these beings are, if we were to look at this from what took place in Enoch and Genesis and the book of Jasher and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the hybridization and the Nephilim, if they can do that, who's to say that they aren't pulling some Stranger Things type of scenario where they have built an army, or it's like Lord of the Rings, and they have literally created this army of, they may not be the initial original 22 fallen angels, but they are the offspring or the creation in some form or fashion of them. And they're evil. I mean, they're literally evil. And there's other people out there that would say, and again, it's not that I don't align with this. It's really hard to find the evidence for it to a certain extent. It doesn't mean that it's not real. There's some of it I believe, some of it I don't. Like if we were to go into like Palladians or the Dracos, like things like that, on my end, it aligns more so with what took place in the garden, or 𝗵𝗃 nigra, the center of the earth, and the fact that if these beings were cast here and they were given a different form, aka reptilians, it would make a lot of sense that they have manifested in that form. And if they are highly intelligent and we are in a three-dimensional realm in the worlds of Nikola Tesla, it would make sense and be understandable that they have the ability to change their image based on frequency and vibrations. And they can show themselves in a different, I mean, again, angels of light, they can manifest different forms. I don't believe that's just some super ethereal, hokey pokey Jesus nonsense. I think there's literal science behind it that we're just not privy to.
I agree. And if you look, like I've had Steve from How to Hunt on my program. I've been on his program as well, where he talks about these cryptids or these Sasquatch or whatever, but somehow or another, they're able to enter into this dimension and leave. They're able to come in
Yep.
and out, and they're able to not be seen, almost like invisibility. It's to me, it's a technology, or it's they're able to enter a spiritual, what we would call a spiritual realm, where that our five senses can't detect.
Yep.
And a lot of these beings have 6 fingers, six toes, which lead me to, like, maybe they have 6 senses. They're able to come in and out of this dimension. I don't know, but the thing is that's one thing, that's one commonality, is they're able to fade in and out of this dimension whenever they please.
It's true.
And that kind of tells me that is those are entities, those are beings in another realm. Obviously, that's not something that we're able to even comprehend right now. So that's what we're fighting against. I mean,
It is powers
it
and
has to be.
principalities. Yeah.
It has to be.
I'm fully convinced that ultimately, beyond the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Orsinis, it is these beings that are, personally, if you want my take on how and why, think about this. If you are a being that is destined to a certain fate, and that fate is the abyss, and you are a highly intelligent, you were born out of the fire of God, and you spent 1,000 years, because again, I'm under the assumption we're in the short season. You spent 1,000 years, okay, tied up, locked up during the millennial kingdom reign, aka Tartaria, and then you are loosed again on earth for a short season. You flood the whole earth through cymatics with the mud flood. And the whole purpose of this is ultimately transhumanism. And here's why. I believe that they're moving us towards transhumanism. One, and everything that we're seeing is about energy. All of it is about, karmic retribution and harvesting our negative energy so that they can remain in power. But I believe that they need us in our DNA because we are creator beings, and they are trying to reverse engineer how to take their consciousness and their soul and put it into a being that is stuck in time so that they can escape their fate.
Agreed. And see, just like what you said right there, genius, folks. And I agree with that, because that's why I think CERN exists. That's
Agreed.
why I believe it's blurring timelines, it's blurring dimensions, the Mandela effect, the whole thing. I believe these are laggard souls that are looking, and they go for the weakest link. They're able to, they roam this planet however they're doing it, and they need bodies to inhabit. So whether it's, let's say, whether they're giants, whether they're gray aliens, whether they're just a really weak person that calls himself they, them, we, whatever. They inhabit. No, but I'm just saying, like,
It's
those
true.
are the
It's
bodies
true.
they inhabit. They go, that's what I want right there. I'm going in that one. And they inhabit these bodies. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that entirely. I mean, if we are even looking at MK Ultra and the abilities that these people eventually are able to attain, it is through trauma. And that trauma opens up certain chakras in our body and in our soul that allow these entities to operate inside of us. And so, again, it sounds science fiction, but the more and more people dig, it is more of a reality than what we're looking at every day on our
That's why you
screens.
have to be so strong in your faith, ladies and gentlemen. Just like you go to the gym every day, you eat healthy, whatever you do, you've got to be strong spiritually. Would you agree with that? You have to
I
be.
do. You have to be. You have to. And we're seeing that right now. My encouragement to people right now is to take heart, because we're at the end of this personally. I believe that come July 2025, this is going to all be wrapped up in some form or fashion.
Oh, you're right on the same.
And
You're with me, dude. Yeah.
and with that, people, I believe what's happening right now, let's say the blue hats, the Annans, the truthers, the light workers.
Be
I
careful with this,
believe,
okay? We're doing so good. We're doing
okay,
so
okay.
good. Be careful.
I believe that the purpose of the last decade, specifically the last 6 years, 2020, etc., is for people to lose themselves so that they can find themselves, so that on the other side of history, they can take their seat and help heal humanity and move us forward in a new world. And so a lot of people who are going through it right now, you're supposed to be. And so lean into it. That's my encouragement to everybody. Lean into those things that you're struggling with, because you're going to find an answer in the pain. The best way to deal with it right now is to just feel it. And you'll wake up and then you'll realize, well, wait a second, I'm on the other side of this. And then you'll realize, well, shit, now I got something else to work on. So yeah, don't lose heart, folks.
So during my boxing career, I had an illustrious, awesome boxing career until about 33 years old, when things just went south on me. And I was almost killed twice, or once, and then I overdosed another time, and a lot of stuff happened to me, and I got this tattoo, right, the phoenix, rising from the ashes. And I was like, I'm gonna make a comeback in boxing. I'm gonna make the biggest comeback anyone's ever seen before. And little did I know, God was breaking me down, and He literally, from ashes to ashes, my whole career was nuked, my life was nuked. I had to reinvent myself in something else, and literally suffered deaths, literally and figuratively, my career, everything, and the death of the ego. Dude, I had
Yes.
and I was man, boxing is all fucking ego. I don't care who you are. If they don't have an ego, they don't need to be in there. They can't be. And now my ego is like, I don't even know who that guy is anymore. So that had to
I
happen to
get
me
it.
to have me doing what I'm doing today with these podcasts and the awakening and everything that I take so serious and I'm so passionate about now. I couldn't fathom I'd be doing this. You know what I mean? But I had to be destroyed and burned and turned into ashes. And then this little did I know, this meant something completely different, completely different. And here I am doing this now, the awakening, right? That's what I feel like my sole purpose is now. And that's what I'm trying to do. So like, that's why I gravitate to people like you. And folks, we're going to now go to my Nino's Corner.tv because we're going to get really deep into this. We're going to talk about how he was propositioned in Hollywood. We're going to talk about, we're going to show his video, which I thought was just amazing. Just probably one of the most amazing videos that I've ever seen, that encapsulates everything on the Great Awakening. But I'm going to show his books. I'm going to show his books. Here they are. You want to describe this for my audience?
Yeah, if you guys can see it on the screen too, I've got them here. So this is the collective work of the last, 2 decades of my life. I've got an entire series. So much like Nino, my life and career and profession and everything and that I once did and once was died hard over the last 4.5 years. And I've spent the better part of almost 2 years writing these books. They are literally the chicken soup for the soul of conspiracies. I thought to myself, how can I create something that's digestible, that is disarming and easy to follow? And if it's something that you gravitate towards, then you've got the information you need to dig deep on it. And so there is literally over 500 different conspiracies in here. I've sectioned them out. This is Echoes of Eden. So this has a lot to do with our Earth and our realm.
You want to show that again so people can see it?
Yeah. So this is Echoes of Eden. This is volume 1. This has to do with, our realm and Earth. This is Cosmic Crossroads. A lot of these have to do with
It's
space.
almost like conspiracies for dummies, right? You kind of make it to where people can follow it and understand it.
Yep. And then this is Digital Divinity. This is everything to do with where we're at realistically right now and where we're potentially headed. And so
𝗬𝗲𝗶𝗹, right? Isn't that what his what's his name calls it? The one that's there was a book he wrote called 𝗬𝗲𝗶𝗹, I think it was. It's about transhumanism. 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝗍, is that his name? 𝗬𝗍𝗍.
No, I know who you're talking about now. Yes, I believe that's it.
Yeah, that's so they're really taking us forward, forging us into this transhuman agenda. But man, we're now gonna go to Rumble. We're now gonna go to Nino's Corner.tv. You can wait for it to go on Rumble, but it'll go on Nino's Corner.tv first. And we're gonna talk about his Hollywood proposition and show his video that made me reach out to him, which I think is phenomenal. I don't know how he did this in a few minutes, but it was awesome. So we're going to go there now, folks. I will see you at Nino's Corner.tv. All right, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining me.